Now, a political poll conducted by market research company Ipsos between June and July last year indicates that 15% of the electorate eligible to vote in this year's national and provincial elections have not yet aligned themselves with a particular political party. This as political parties and independent candidates are in full swing on their campaign trails in an effort to win voters. The poll also showed that multi-party charter for South Africa, currently comprising 6 parties, looks to draw about 31 to 33% of the vote. Now, for his views on how the year 2024 could look as the country prepares to hold what could be its most crucial elections since 1994, we're joined by Dr Levy Ndou, a political analyst. Dr. Ndou, a very good morning to you. A warm welcome to Morning Live. Now, I'm going to start with this about 2024. It's a very crucial year in terms of politics since the country's first democratic elections. What are your thoughts on what the political landscape looks like for the year?
Good morning, Levo. Good morning to the viewers at home. I think you're quite correct to say these are quite important elections in the sense that they are coming after 3 decades into our democracy. But at the same time, we've also observed the realignment of the political parties in South Africa, that most parties have actually realized that on their own they cannot be able to make it and win the votes or take power away from the ANC. And the best thing is for them to come together so that they can be able to make a difference in the political setup. It is also coming at a time when you have got a lot of new voters who have not experienced apartheid, and to these new voters, history does not matter much, and they are actually influenced by what is actually happening in their own surrounding. So where you come from, what has happened in the past couldn't matter that much. At the same time, you having these elections in a period where, when you look at the election trends in the past few elections, the ANC appears not to be doing very, very well, and that encourages other political parties to work even harder in order to win the elections. But also at the same time, they've got a feeling that it is possible for them to be able to make a difference and make a bigger margin. So it will be very, very interesting to have these elections. Lastly, you're also going to have, for the first time, independent candidates contesting for elections, meaning that political party lines would not matter much, and it will be individuals who must therefore go out and make and prove a point that they can still make it outside political homes. It could have its own challenges in terms of resources and in terms of crisscrossing the country. But this is what democracy in South Africa has brought to us.
I mean, and there's just under about 600 political parties registered with the IEC, 360 of which are eligible to contest the national elections. Does the increase of political parties and independent candidates reflect a sign of a working democracy, or will it have a negative impact on the electorate still to decide on their party choices?
It does. What we have in South Africa is an open democracy in which everybody else and groupings are given the opportunity to participate in the elections, to become candidates and freely participate. It could have its own negative implications, which we still have to wait and see if the IEC can be able to identify such and develop a framework. For an example, if you have got a lot of political parties and independent candidates on the ballot, it would therefore mean that the time that a voter could spend would be longer than the time that voters spent in the previous elections. It will therefore mean that the ballot paper will be bigger, and when you vote, you have to look at them, and the time has to be extended. It might have implications on the period for voting by the IEC. But at the same time, if indeed we are able to identify some of the bigger challenges, there should therefore be a way in which certain conditions are set for parties to be registered and participate, because it might have negative implications at the end of the day.
And is there enough time between now and, when the election does happen, say, for instance, in May, for the electorate to then decide, given the amount of political parties and independents that exist between now and May?
There is sufficient time for political parties to go all out and campaign and make sure that citizens vote for their parties. Political parties in South Africa, especially the bigger ones, are well resourced and they are grounded, that they can be able to go all out in all the 9 provinces and the different regions in the country to be able to campaign and make their presence felt. But at the same time, if you have got smaller parties and independent candidates, it could be a different situation, because they would have to go everywhere in the country, and if resources are not available or sufficient, the time might be very much limited. But with the use of technology and all the available resources for communication, I think all political parties are given a fair chance to be able to go out and convince the people to vote for them. The unfortunate part is that no one would ever say that there has been sufficient time, because campaigning requires a lot of energy, it requires a lot of resources, and indeed it requires a lot of supportive staff, so that the work that is done is actually seen to be sufficient and indeed could be able to make a difference for the political parties.
And what does the campaign look like for the ANC, who head into this election without the endorsement, for instance, of the former President Jacob Zuma?
Well, I think the ANC is in a difficult situation, which in my view they should have been prepared for. And they should have also developed much better strategies to deal with these campaigns. With the ANC now, unlike in the past, they've been able to launch their leagues, and I think they will need this leadership of the leagues to be able to go out and campaign for them. They'll also need the alliance partners to actually do the same. At the same time, there is a view that is coming from most South Africans and influential people indeed, who are saying that the ANC might not do well. And that is also based on the fact that when you look at the election trends, the support of the ANC appears to be going all down. And I think, in my view, that it is a wake-up call for the ANC not to take these elections for granted and work even much harder. At the same time level, the other different political parties appears to be very much excited about the polls that they are getting, and they feel that this is the only moment in which they can be able to get access to state power, and they're actually going to work much harder. And that makes these elections to be indeed quite interesting.
Speaking of opposition parties, the multi-party charter, or the Moonshot Pact, also came out. How much impact will that have on elections going forward?
We still need to assess the power dynamics and the relations within the Moon Pact, how the different political parties are actually going to be working together, and how those who consider themselves to be senior partners in the pact are actually conducting themselves. We still have to look at the support that different political parties, supporters might be having on the pact, and how they actually communicate their message out there. We still need to get to know who are the actual people who are going to be running the campaigns for this pact, because that has a huge impact on the following. So there is still, in my view, a lot of work that is supposed to be done by the Moon Pact, because ordinary citizens are actually waiting to see the approach that they are going to take, and whatever they decide would have an impact as to whether they're going to make a huge impact in terms of support, and that can also make them fall. So whatever strategy that they take should be well calculated, and it should have the support of all parties that are there, and indeed the supporters of the different political parties that are the participants there.
And how does then a party like the EFF then position itself, given what the ANC is doing and what the multi-party charter or the Moonshot Pact then does? How does a party like the EFF, which has grown over the years, position itself ahead of the polls?
My view is that the EFF has got very little work to do. All they need to do is to go and focus on their traditional support base, which is mainly young people who are found in the townships and the villages of the Republic of South Africa, make sure that they consolidate that support, ensure that there is sufficient party cohesion within the leadership, and maintain whatever they've been doing that has made them to grow as a political party. They don't seem, in my view, to be a party that will be very much worried about these elections, because they know that they are a growing party and their support appears to be intact. At the same time, other political parties, and in the main who are in the opposition, should be worried about the growth of other political parties, and it will make them to work even harder to ensure that they attract support so that they don't get disappointed come the election dates.
And now the ANC is preparing to hold its 112th celebrations in Mpumalanga next week, where, the ruling party's President Cyril Ramaphosa will also deliver his January 8th statement. Will this be an indication of how the party might perform at this year's elections?
In my view, this is the opportunity that the ANC is also going to use to outline the program for 2024. I think what they will also do would be to indicate specific areas that will touch on the elections that the ANC is going to be focusing on. After the January 8th statement, members of the ANC and ordinary citizens will be watching, would therefore be in a good position to know and understand the program that the ANC is going to be focusing on 2024 and moving towards elections. What, in my view, should be very primary for the ANC would be to outline the program on how they're going to deal with the challenges that has got a potential to make voters not to vote for them, because they know exactly the areas in which people are worried about, and they need to be seen moving faster in ensuring that they address such challenges. And this statement is going to be the right opportunity for the ANC to explain their plans for all of us, and indeed, what is it that they can bring to South Africans.
Dr. Levy Ndou, always a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you so much for talking to us. He is a political analyst, giving us his 2024 political forecast as the country prepares to hold the general and national elections.